about limping to the finish line? The not-so-Golden State Warriors have done just that. They wrapped up their season last night with the opposite of a bow. What's the opposite of a bow? It's a 40-point loss to the Utah Jazz. This from the team who looked, played, and carried themselves as unstoppable 2 months ago. The Warriors now have lost 10 of their last 17 games. They'll be the 2 seed, the firm 2 seed in the Western Conference playoffs. Coach, how concerning are the Warriors' struggles entering the postseason now?
I'm a little concerned. Steve Kerr has to say the things that he's saying to give his team the mental support that, we're still the champions and we're still good enough to win the whole thing.
But he's worried.
But you have to tell me this. Every year, winning, it does catch up with you eventually.
Yes.
The wear and tear physically is the first thing, but mentally it takes its toll on you. Everybody's after you. Everybody wants a piece of your team. Everybody celebrates after they beat the defending world champs. And now you compound it with the injuries. And you're talking about arguably the best point guard in the NBA. You may have other ones you like better. But you can't lose a Curry and expect to be a champion again.
Here's the thing. I absolutely agree that they are not a championship team without Steph Curry. And I think that if we found out Steph had, instead of just spraining his MCL, torn his ACL and was done for the year, you could scratch them off the list. Like, they are no longer eligible to be champions. But that's not the situation. What they are is they're going to have to go through a stretch of basketball without him. They expect him back in a couple weeks, they hope. I'm shocked that they went from championship team to below 500. We're talking about almost a quarter of the season. 17 games where they've been outscored by their opponents, where they don't seem to have the ability to show up each and every night. And people can say, oh, well, they got bored with all the winning. Well, the best player on their team has only been on the team for a year and a half, and Kevin Durant. Like, that's the part of this that to me is so disappointing, is that I know you can't win a championship without Steph Curry, but you've got to fall to where you're below 500, to where you're getting beaten by 40 points in your final game of the year, where you played your starters. It's not like they rested everyone. All their starters played heavy minutes last night. Like, that's the part of this that is, to me, legitimately concerning when you talk about them in the first round, because they're not going to have Steph in the first round of the playoffs.
Nick, I'm not trying to defend the Golden State Warriors, but
defend them. We need some defense on the show.
Go back maybe 10 games ago. At that point, and I remember saying it around that time, that they now know they're not catching Houston.
Yes.
It was over. You can look at the schedule, who Houston had left, home games, away games, above 500, below 500.
Houston had the tiebreaker, all of it.
All of that. So they looked at that. At that point, when you recognize, you know what, they're too far in front of us, we're not going to catch them, their mentality changed. They weren't chasing that carrot any longer. They weren't going to be the #1 seed. They weren't going to have it all the way through the playoffs. So as a result of that, what happens, what sets in is the complacency of, all right, let's just get to the playoffs and then we start over again. What I worry about is when you turn it off, can you turn it back on? That's what I'm thinking.
And there's a laid-back atmosphere in Golden State. One of the reasons why KD decided to go there was how they approach the season, how they approach practices, how they have a very casual day-to-day operation, how they practice, and the style for which Steve Kerr is saying the right things. Now, I'm not going to blame Kevin Durant. I feel like certain people are trying to blame Kevin Durant for this. I'm from your camp. Man, when they went off the accelerator and put it in neutral, like, you could see it and been like, wow, that's fairly obvious. I'm not concerned in the playoffs. I'm only concerned if Steph Curry is not going to be healthy, because you can't go to 3 straight finals. You can't be the reigning NBA champion unless you have a couple extra gears to go to. I believe that they still have that.
The reason, if I may, just real quick, because I'm one of those people that is blaming Kevin Durant on this. He's the second best player in the world.
Yeah, I don't want to say your name.
No, I appreciate that. I'll be honest. Like, he's the second best player in the world. He's the best player on the team. He's the defending finals MVP. It is on him, as the best player on that team, to end this stretch. Once they found out Steph was going to be out for the first round of the playoffs, guys, don't worry about it.
What about Draymond? But Draymond is more of a leader of that team than KD is. How about Draymond? In that same stretch of games, tell me how Draymond's played. In that same stretch of games, tell me how Klay's played. What about their bench? All right, like their lack of veteran presence coming off the bench, lack of scoring from their bench.
So let me, sorry to cut you off. I thought you wanted me to answer the specific Draymond. Draymond's offense has gone away without Steph. It's just he hasn't gotten the open shots. It's gone away. Klay's been about the same guy. Klay's kind of a metronome. Like, it almost doesn't matter who's out there. None of those guys are as talented as Durant. And like you can't tell me that they have the confidence of, oh, we can just turn it on. They've never had to turn it on without Stephen Curry.
But the
Cavs have been mediocre, and it was LeBron.
Absolutely, but they have seen
they've been mediocre.
Agreed,
and they've had injuries.
Let me just say this, if I can, real quick about both people. Number one, KD, personality. Is he that personality? He's not LeBron's personality. No. So KD may be the second best player in the world, but he's not that guy that vocally is going to turn on his teammates to get them to play better, raise their level. Draymond is that guy that will turn on his teammates, but at some point he has to realize, I can't keep doing this right now, because they've gone into neutral, and they don't want to hear me every game. Now, we're not catching Houston. We've got to finish these next 10 games. I've got to back off a little bit. So what drives him all the time, and he pushes his teammates, he's had to back off a little bit. From the outside, that's how I look at it.
At the start of this stretch, when Steph was out, we started talking about their offensive woes. What was explained, or what was thrown out on the table, was, well, this is Steph's offense. And right now they're not running Steph's offense. So when he comes back, they'll be able to, and it's too late to create a different offense with these other three superstars, no matter how good Clay is, or Draymond is, or Kevin Durant is. It's still run through Steph. Do you still feel that way? And how much is that going to affect them now in the first round of the playoffs without Steph?
Too, when Cleveland had the injuries, LeBron can take over the point, so he can run the offense. What Jenna's talking about is how Golden State and the gravity of Steph, his uniqueness as far as where he can shoot from, and the pace for which they play at when he gets the ball. What it does for Clay, what it does for Draymond, and you can never help off on KD. So his ability to affect the rest of the team and the pace is totally different. LeBron, they can play at that same pace because they just give the ball to him. He pushes up. They can still play with pace and space. So the difference of Golden State without Steph, it's impossible to play that type of offense, Coach.
It's hard for me to say this and simplify it to this point, but I don't know how many people really understand the impact of the three-point shot. It's enormous in the NBA game now. And when you make a commitment as a team, as a franchise, that that's how we're going to play, Steph Curry is a monster, because you can do anything you want. But when he's making threes from 3, 4, 5 feet behind the three-point line, what do you do with that? And there's no better example than the Cavaliers. For the last 3 seasons, they developed into one of the premier three-point shooting teams. That all went away early in the season. Those guys couldn't make threes early on, the group that they had. They were either too old, their legs weren't there to do it. Isaiah Thomas wasn't playing the first 37 games. Now, all of a sudden, when they've played well in the last 14, 15-game stretch, look at their three-point shooting. They're making threes again.
Coach, let me ask you this, though. Steph being out explains why the offense would go from best in the league or second best in the league to middle of the pack. I understand that. The defense getting worse without Steph Curry, the defense, when you have 2 guys who, at the halfway point of this year, and Draymond and KD were on your Defensive Player of the Year ballot, 2 guys, the defense being worse when you remove from the starting lineup your worst defender, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, that's a part.
Are you telling me that Steph's not a first-team all-defensive player?
Oh, no, yeah, that's exactly what I'm
trying to tell me that?
Yeah, I am trying to tell you that.
If you don't, if your heart and soul is not into it 100%, you're not going to be a good defensive team. You have to buy into defense. You have to be collectively. That's why the Cavaliers' defense has turned into such a poor unit defensively. And Tyronn Lue is saying, come playoff time, we'll get back to being a better defense. You will automatically in the playoffs because the game slows down.
Yes.
There's not as many possessions. There won't be as many points scored. There won't be as many transition baskets scored. But that's a byproduct of the game in the playoffs versus the regular season. But you can't commit 100% at the defensive end. You're not going to be a good defensive team.
Coach, thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you,
thanks for bringing that shirt.
All right, coming up, we find into the Jimmy G hype too early. Joe Montana thinks so. Wait till you hear what he has to say. We're back after this.
Same rack.
Same rack.
Yeah.
Same closet.
Wear the suit again. Don't bring that T-shirt back.
I won't do that.